The night was heavy with silence, as the sprawling mansion stood cloaked in shadows. A chandelier flickered above marble floors, its crystals swaying gently as if disturbed by an unseen hand. Suddenly, the sharp crack of a gunshot shattered the stillness, echoing like thunder across empty halls. The Mafia kingpin collapsed, his tailored suit soaking in crimson as his hand reached desperately for the phone. His lips trembled with the weight of betrayal, but only silence answered. The screen lit up with a single message: "It's done. The king is dead." Across the corridor, Anthony said, "This changes everything." The enforcer, cold and still, whispered under his breath, "Loyalty means nothing anymore." Somewhere deeper, shadows shifted. The betrayer watched with hidden satisfaction. The air thickened with fear, every corner of the mansion alive with paranoia. For the protagonist, Michael, the sound of that single bullet marked the death not only of a man but of an empire. He muttered, "The war has begun." The silence after was more terrifying than the shot itself. The echoes of the gunshot still rattled the marble walls, as Michael rushed deeper into the mansion. His breath grew ragged, every corner alive with the ghosts of betrayal. He whispered, "We were meant to protect him." The enforcer followed silently, his boots striking like hammers, his silence louder than words. Blood painted the floor like a trail, guiding them toward the grand hall where servants huddled, terrified. One of them stammered, "The king is gone, isn't he?" Michael tightened his jaw, unable to answer. The betrayer's presence lingered like perfume in the air, unseen but undeniable. "This house is no longer a sanctuary," Michael muttered. The enforcer finally spoke, his deep voice cutting the silence. "Now it's a tomb." Shadows closed in, paranoia mounting as allies turned into suspects. The empire's foundation shook, not from the gunshot, but from the silence that followed. Michael stopped in the grand hall, staring at portraits of the family that had once been his world. He remembered childhood promises spoken under this roof, now broken by blood. He said, "What loyalty means nothing when family destroys family." The ally emerged from the shadows, calm but wary. James said, "You'll need someone who knows the cracks in this empire." Michael studied him, torn between trust and suspicion. The hall smelled of gunpowder and roses, a chilling reminder of death and beauty intertwined. Above them, the chandelier still trembled as if echoing the king's fall. Michael whispered, "This place was built on lies." James replied, "And lies always collapse." Together, they stood in silence, the weight of the empire pressing down on their shoulders, the future uncertain and treacherous. News of the king's death spread like wildfire through the mansion. Michael overheard whispers in the corners, voices trembling with fear. A servant muttered, "He wasn't killed by enemies, it was one of us." Suspicion carved deeper into every face. Betrayer Lydia stood near the staircase, her expression unreadable, her eyes sharp like daggers. Michael narrowed his gaze, but said nothing. The enforcer leaned against the wall, silent yet intimidating, as though daring anyone to speak further. Trust is poison now, Michael thought. The empire that had ruled through fear was now devouring itself from within. Every shadow seemed a threat, every ally a hidden enemy. Michael clenched his fists and muttered, "The war isn't outside these walls. It's here." The mansion had become a cage, its grandeur turned into a battlefield of suspicion. Michael walked into the king's private study, shelves lined with secrets written in ink and blood. A note lay on the desk, scrawled hastily, "Trust no one." His pulse quickened as he read it. The enforcer entered quietly, eyes scanning the room like a predator. Michael said, "Well, find the traitor." The enforcer's cold reply was simple, "Then you better pray it's not someone you love." Michael froze, the words cutting deeper than any blade. He realized that the betrayal he feared most might not come from enemies, but from blood itself. As he turned toward the shadows, Lydia's perfume drifted faintly through the air. Michael muttered, "It's already begun." Michael stepped into the smoking lounge, the air thick with cigar haze and whispers of conspiracy. He said, "Loyalty used to mean something. Now it feels like a trap." James, the ally, leaned back in his chair, his cautious eyes scanning every corner. James replied, "In this world, trust is just a currency that loses value the moment blood spills." Michael's jaw tightened as he glanced at the scarred portraits on the wall, the history of betrayal staring back at him. "If I can't trust my family, then who?" he muttered under his breath. The enforcer entered silently, his heavy boots dragging the tension deeper into the room. "Trust no one," the enforcer growled, his voice sharp as steel. Michael felt the weight of his words like chains tightening. The mansion creaked as if echoing their paranoia. Lydia passed in the hallway beyond, her silhouette a reminder that betrayal was not just rumor but reality. Michael whispered to himself, "Every shadow hides an enemy." The silence shattered when the enforcer dragged a trembling lieutenant into the hall, his face bloodied from interrogation. Michael said, "Enough. We need answers, not corpses." The enforcer snarled, "Answers come with fear, not kindness." He lifted the man's collar, forcing him against the marble wall. The lieutenant cried, "I don't know anything, please." James stepped forward, his voice calm yet steady. "Violence will silence him forever. We need him to talk." The enforcer's eyes narrowed, his rage a storm barely contained. Michael placed his hand on the enforcer's arm, muttering, "If fear is all we have left, then we're no better than him." The words struck the enforcer like a blade, his grip loosening slightly. The mansion's grand hall echoed with the clash between loyalty and brutality, a reminder that the Empire's strength was turning against itself. Later, in the garden under moonlight, Michael confronted James privately. He said, "Why should I trust you when everyone here bleeds deception?" James smirked faintly, his breath visible in the cold night. "Because I hate them as much as you do." Michael's eyes narrowed, unsure whether to believe. The fountain trickled beside them, its waters darkened by shadows, a symbol of purity long tainted. James leaned in and whispered, "I've seen the cracks in their empire. If we move together, we can tear it apart." Michael said, "And when I fall, will you stab me too?" James held his gaze firmly, replying, "If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't be asking that question." Michael exhaled sharply, torn between his instinct and desperation. The night wind carried faint echoes of distant gunfire, reminding them that war wasn't coming. It was already here. In a quiet corner of the mansion, Sophia, the victim, sat trembling, her innocence bleeding into the darkness. Michael knelt before her, his voice softer now. "You don't belong in this war," Sophia whispered. "I didn't ask to be here, but they've taken everything." Her eyes shimmered with tears, her fear a mirror of Michael's guilt. Lydia appeared at the doorway, her gaze cold, her smile sharp like broken glass. "She's bait, and you know it," Lydia said. Michael stood, fury burning in his chest. "Touch her, and you'll regret it." Lydia laughed softly, her voice dripping poison. "Regret, that's all this family knows." Michael shielded Sophia, his mind torn between vengeance and protection. For the first time, he felt the true cost of betrayal, not his life, but hers. The council room filled with lieutenants, their whispers venomous. Michael stood at the table's head, his voice firm. "We cannot fight the world if we're tearing each other apart." A lieutenant sneered, "Says the man who couldn't protect our king." Rage flickered in Michael's eyes, but he swallowed it down. James added, "The betrayal isn't outside. It's festering in this room." Silence fell heavy, each man glancing suspiciously at the other. Lydia's gaze slid across the table, her eyes locking briefly with Michael's, a hidden warning beneath her calm mask. The enforcer struck the table with his fist, shaking glasses. "Enough. One more word and I'll silence you myself." Michael whispered, "The walls are crumbling. If we don't act, the Empire dies tonight." Every face in the room stiffened, the truth too sharp to deny. Michael wandered into the old family chapel, its candles long extinguished, dust thick on every pew. He stared at stained glass windows, the saints fractured by shadows. His voice cracked as he whispered, This was where we promised to protect one another. Memories flooded in, his father's stern lessons, Lydia's laughter echoing from their youth, the weight of belonging to a family built on blood and fear. Michael clenched his fists, muttering, "I was a child, and they made me into a soldier." The silence around him felt heavier than the marble walls, as though the past itself was pressing against his chest. James entered quietly, his voice steady. "You've always carried their sins." Michael looked at him sharply. "And now I carry their ghosts too." A cold draft swept through the chapel, extinguishing the last flickering candle. Michael whispered, "Family is a curse we never escape." Gunfire rattled the night as Michael led a raid against a hidden warehouse. Bullets cracked through steel beams, sparks showering from ricochets. He shouted, "Push forward!" Enforcers stormed ahead, ruthless and cold, his heavy weapon spitting fire. James ducked behind crates, returning fire with sharp precision. The betrayer's shadow lingered in Michael's mind as he fought, knowing someone inside had fed their enemies information. Explosions lit the warehouse, throwing everything into chaos. A lieutenant screamed, "They knew we were coming!" Michael's stomach sank, realizing betrayal had brought them here. Smoke choked the air, and through it, Michael muttered, "Trust has killed more of us than bullets tonight." The battle raged, but in his heart, war had shifted into something personal, blood calling for blood. At dawn in the king's private quarters, the antagonist Vincent stood tall before shattered windows, the sunrise burning behind him. He said, "Do you see what happens when weakness infects loyalty?" His voice dripped contempt, power radiating from every word. Michael entered cautiously, his jaw tight. "You built this empire on fear, Vincent, not loyalty." Vincent turned, his silver hair catching firelight, his eyes cold steel. "Fear keeps men in line. Love makes them betray." He poured himself whiskey with calm precision, his movements calculated like a predator. Michael's anger flared. "You call this power? You're a king standing on corpses." Vincent smirked. "And yet, I'm still standing." The room fell silent, the weight of their shared history pressing down, one man the ghost of tradition, the other the shadow of rebellion. Later that night, Lydia played her role flawlessly at a gathering in the ballroom, her red dress shimmering like flame under golden chandeliers. She laughed with the lieutenants, her smile warm yet venom hidden beneath. Michael watched from the balcony above, suspicion burning in his chest. He muttered, "Every word she speaks is a knife." Lydia's eyes flickered upward for a brief moment, meeting his gaze across the crowd. Her smirk betrayed her knowledge. She knew he was watching, she wanted him to. James whispered beside him, "She's weaving a web. And soon, someone will choke." The violins played soft music, but beneath the melody was the sound of lies tightening around their throats. Michael whispered, "And the worst part? She's family." In the quiet after the party, Michael returned to the family crypt beneath the mansion. He stood before his parents' tomb, the silence suffocating. He whispered, "You told me blood was sacred. You never said it would be poison." The flickering torchlight carved shadows across his face. Lydia appeared behind him, her footsteps soft but sharp. "We were raised in lies," she said. Michael turned, anger clashing with sorrow. "And now, you're the biggest lie of them all." Lydia's smirk faltered for just a moment, revealing pain buried deep. "I did what I had to," she said coldly. Michael stepped closer, his voice low. "Betrayal doesn't cleanse the past. It only buries it deeper." Their eyes locked, siblings bound by blood, torn by choice. The crypt groaned with silence, holding centuries of sins now joined by theirs. Michael rifled through the king's private files, pages yellowed with secrets of decades. His pulse quickened as he uncovered coded ledgers tied to hidden accounts. He whispered, "This isn't business, it's treason." James entered, eyes scanning nervously. "Someone close to you fed them everything," he said grimly. Michael clenched his jaw, muttering, "I knew betrayal lived here, but I didn't think it would wear my blood's face." Outside the study, The enforcer lingered, listening in silence, his expression unreadable. Lydia's laughter drifted faintly from the hall, a melody of poison disguised as warmth. The truth felt heavier than the Empire itself, chains binding Michael to a fate he dreaded. He whispered, "Blood isn't thicker than betrayal. It's just the stain it leaves." Michael sat across from James in the dim library, the air thick with dust and paranoia. He said, "If she's behind this, why wait so long?" James leaned closer, whispering, "Because betrayal cuts deepest when it feels like salvation." Michael's fists tightened, rage warring with grief. "She was my sister. My blood," he muttered, voice shaking. James' tone softened. "Family is where betrayal always begins. That's why it breaks us most." Michael exhaled sharply, pressing his palms against the table, as if to steady a collapsing world. Shadows flickered across his face, the weight of trust shattering. He whispered, "If this is true, then I've been at war with a ghost wearing her smile." In the armory, the enforcer sat polishing his weapon, his silence sharper than any blade. Michael approached cautiously, saying, "You've always followed orders, even when they killed loyalty." The enforcer's scarred face lifted slowly, his eyes dark with unspoken war. "Loyalty dies fast, fear lasts forever," he muttered. Michael stared at him, voice low but firm. "Even fear breaks when the betrayer is family." For the first time, the enforcer's hand hesitated, the cloth freezing mid-motion. His jaw clenched, the hint of doubt cutting through his steel mask. Michael whispered, "If you hesitate now, it means you've already chosen sides." The enforcer said nothing, but his silence screamed louder than words. The grand hall shimmered with golden chandeliers as Lydia moved gracefully among lieutenants, her red dress burning like a flame in the crowd. Her words flowed like silk, but her eyes glinted with steel. Michael watched from the edge, heart pounding with certainty that she was weaving the Empire's ruin. James whispered, "She's not hiding anymore, she's performing." Lydia's laughter rang, masking venom and charm. Michael muttered, "She isn't tearing us down quietly. She wants us to watch it burn." His eyes locked with hers across the hall, a silent duel in which truth bled through disguise. In her smirk he saw it, the betrayal no words could deny. In the crypt's suffocating silence, Michael faced Lydia at last. She leaned casually against a stone pillar, her smile razor-sharp. "You were always the good soldier," she said coldly. Michael's voice cracked with fury. "You destroyed everything we swore to protect." Lydia's smirk deepened, but her eyes betrayed flickers of pain. "I didn't destroy it, Michael. I exposed it. You just refused to see the rot." His fists trembled, torn between rage and heartbreak. "You're my sister, my blood." Lydia's tone turned icy. "Blood means nothing. Power is all that survives." Michael whispered, voice breaking, "Then you've already lost yourself." The crypt groaned around them, the weight of their bloodline collapsing under betrayal. Michael unfolded the coded ledgers in the council chamber, his eyes scanning the web of offshore accounts and connections, stretching far beyond their empire. He whispered, "This wasn't just family business. It's a global network." James leaned closer, his voice sharp. "Cartels, politicians, arms dealers, they've all been playing the same game." Michael clenched the paper, fury rising. "We were pawns, not players." The enforcer stepped from the shadows, his voice low. "Pawns are meant to be sacrificed." Michael's chest tightened as he realized the truth. Their empire had never been sovereign. It was a puppet show controlled by unseen hands. He muttered, "We thought we ruled this world, but we were never more than pieces on someone else's board." In his estate's shattered study, Vincent slammed his glass against the wall, whiskey dripping like blood down the wallpaper. His voice roared, "They think they can turn my empire into theirs." His silver hair gleamed under fractured light, eyes burning with rage. "I built this kingdom on fire and steel." Michael entered cautiously, fists clenched. "And now you're watching it crumble into dust." Vincent turned, his expression twisted. "Cracks? There are no cracks, boy. There's only betrayal in my house." His voice thundered, but the desperation behind it revealed his fear. Michael muttered, "Even kings bleed when the throne is rotten." The study's silence swallowed his words, but Vincent's glare promised war that would consume them all. In a hidden archive, James risked everything, breaking open a steel cabinet to uncover dossiers stamped with government seals. He muttered, "This goes higher than cartels. It's politicians feeding the blood trade." Michael stared, horror mixing with fury. "They've been pulling strings in silence, and we've been killing each other for their game." James shoved the files into Michael's hands. Expose this, and you don't just bring down a family. You topple an empire that spans nations." Michael's voice cracked. "And they'll kill us before we take a step out that door." James smirked bitterly. "Then we take steps they don't expect." The papers felt heavier than bullets in Michael's hands, each page a weapon of truth. Sophia's scream echoed in the mansion's abandoned wing, her fragile form dragged into the shadows by masked men. Michael's heart raced as he stormed after them, shouting, "Let her go." His footsteps pounded like war drums, rage overtaking fear. He burst into the hall where Sophia trembled, a gun pressed to her temple. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Michael." His chest tightened, fury burning behind his eyes. "She's not part of this war," he shouted. The betrayer, Lydia, appeared at the far end of the hall, her red dress glowing under fractured light. "Oh, but she is. She's your weakness," she sneered. Michael's gun shook in his hand, his voice cracking. "You'll regret this, Lydia. I swear it." In the war room, Michael spread out the files, the Empire's truth glowing beneath flickering lights. His hands trembled as he whispered, "We were never kings, never soldiers. We were pawns in their war." James' face hardened. "The question is, do we keep playing, or flip the board?" Michael exhaled, pain lacing his words. "If I expose this, I destroy the only family I have left." The enforcer's deep voice cut through the silence. "Family's already dead. Only power breathes now." Michael's eyes darkened, torn between survival and justice. Then maybe it's time power learned what justice feels like. The room seemed to tilt under the weight of his choice, the Empire's foundations crumbling beneath him. The estate loomed at the edge of the sea, its walls glistening in the storm's rage. Lightning split the sky as Michael approached the gates, every step weighted with blood and memory. He whispered, "This is where it ends." The iron creaked as he pushed forward, rain soaking his leather jacket, thunder echoing his heartbeat. The enforcer followed behind, silent and grim, his scarred face unreadable. James muttered, "This isn't a battle. It's an execution." Michael's jaw tightened, his eyes locked on the glowing windows ahead. "No," he said, his voice trembling with rage. "It's judgment." The storm howled like an omen, waves crashing against the cliffs as the mansion awaited, a grave dressed in gold. Inside the grand hall, Michael faced Lydia beneath chandeliers trembling from the storm. Her red dress glimmered like fire, her smirk unbroken. "Little brother," she said, "always chasing ghosts." Michael's voice cracked with fury. "You burned everything we built." Lydia tilted her head, eyes sharp. "I didn't burn it. I revealed the ashes it was built on." The enforcer shifted uneasily, his silence heavier than steel. James muttered, "She's been waiting for this stage." Michael stepped closer, his voice raw. "You betrayed blood." Lydia's smile faltered, pain flickering beneath. "Blood betrayed me first." The storm outside rattled windows as brother and sister faced off, years of love and lies collapsing into ruin. The enforcer stepped forward, his rifle trembling slightly for the first time. He muttered, "Orders used to be simple. Kill, obey, survive." Michael stared at him, voice shocked. "And now?" The enforcer's eyes flickered with doubt, scars etched deep with regret. "Now I wonder if I was killing pieces of myself all along." Lydia sneered, "Don't grow a conscience now. You're nothing but a blade." His jaw clenched, and for the first time his voice cracked. "Maybe the blade decides what it cuts." Michael whispered, "This is your chance. Redemption or damnation." Silence engulfed the hall, every eye locked on the man who had killed for loyalty, but now trembled before betrayal. Deeper inside the estate, Michael burst into a chamber lined with golden maps. Vincent stood waiting, whiskey untouched, his silver hair gleaming like steel. "At last," he said coldly. Michael's voice shook with rage. "You pulled strings while we drowned in blood." Vincent smiled faintly. "I built an empire. You were too small to see the board." Michael's fists tightened. "You turned us into pawns for ghosts in suits." Vincent raised his glass calmly. "And yet, here you are, still playing." Michael's breath came hard, thunder shaking the chamber. "Not playing, ending." The two men locked eyes. One the architect of shadows, the other the ghost of rebellion, both standing on the edge of fire. Lightning roared as Michael stood between Lydia and Vincent, the storm tearing at the walls. His chest heaved, words cracking. "Revenge or justice? Which burns less?" Lydia smirked coldly. "Justice is a fairy tale." Vincent sneered. "Revenge is the only truth men bleed for." Michael raised his pistol, hand trembling with rage and grief. His voice broke. "Then maybe justice is the only lie worth dying for." Silence crashed heavier than thunder as he aimed, caught between blood and empire, between the ghosts of family and the shadow of truth. The storm rattled windows, the mansion groaned like a dying beast, and the world waited for his choice. The estate groaned as fire spread across its gilded halls, the storm outside fueling the inferno. Glass shattered as chandeliers crashed, the empire collapsing in its own tomb. Michael staggered through smoke, gun still in hand, his face etched with grief. James shouted over the roar, "It's over, the empire is gone." Michael coughed, his voice hoarse. "Not over. Only burned into ash." The enforcer pulled a wounded lieutenant from debris, his scarred face softer, almost human. The walls crumbled, history breaking under the weight of betrayal. Michael whispered, "This kingdom of blood dies tonight." The flames swallowed portraits, the ghosts of family reduced to smoke drifting into the storm. Michael emerged into the storm, rain extinguishing flames on his jacket as the mansion collapsed behind him. He fell to his knees on the soaked ground, chest heaving, the empire's weight crushing his spirit. James placed a hand on his shoulder, whispering, "You survived." Michael's voice broke. "Survived what? My family's ghost? My soul's ruin?" Lightning split the sky, illuminating the enforcer who stood silently, his rifle discarded in mud, his scarred face wet with more than rain. The silence between them was heavier than thunder. Michael whispered, "I survived nothing. I'm just hollow now." The storm wept with him, the night swallowing the man who once believed in loyalty. Among the ruins, Sophia's frail figure emerged, her pale face streaked with tears and ash. She stumbled forward, whispering, "Michael." His chest tightened as he caught her in his arms. She trembled, her voice breaking. "I thought I'd never see you again." Michael closed his eyes, guilt searing through him. "You should have never been dragged into this." Sophia shook her head weakly, tears glistening. "You saved me. That's all that matters." Behind them, the enforcer turned away, unable to face innocence he'd helped destroy. James' eyes softened, but his voice was firm. "She is proof there's something worth saving," Michael whispered, "or proof of how much I've lost." Dawn crept across the ruins, the storm fading into silence. James stood apart, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He said quietly, "Our paths end here. Trust is too fragile to carry forward." Michael's voice was hollow. "After all this, you still walk away." James offered a faint smirk. "Survival doesn't mean walking together." The enforcer dropped his weapon at Michael's feet, his scarred hands trembling. "This is where I stop too. Blood doesn't wash clean." Michael's jaw tightened, his voice breaking. "So I'm left with ghosts and ashes," James replied. "Or freedom, if you can stand it." They turned, leaving him alone amid ruin, loyalty dissolved into silence. As the sun rose, Michael walked away from the ruins, his body battered, his soul hollow. Each step felt heavier than the last, his shadow stretching across broken ground. In the distance, a faint phone rang from the wreckage, its sound sharp as a blade. Michael paused, his eyes empty, his face carved with scars of grief. He whispered, "The war is never over." Without turning back, he disappeared into the mist, his figure swallowed by dawn's pale light. The ringing continued, unanswered, echoing like a ghost calling him home. The world had shifted, but the cost of survival was a soul left shattered.